So earlier in the summer, we made an attempt to come out here. We're at Sutter's Mill. I'm with Tamara and her son and daughter, Sarah and Evan. So we're back at Sutter's Mill right now. It's warm. It's November 12th. Uh, a really good day to be out here. I think it was a little bit on the cooler side last time, but they're inside a museum, the entry museum where you pay the fee. When I go in there, I'm going to film some of the exhibits, but I'm not going to talk. There's a few people that are watching the exhibits, and it can be kind of annoying for people like me to go in there and start explaining the exhibits to people on YouTube. But I'll just go real slow so you can see where you check in. I think the fee is like $8 to park or something. I have a veteran's pass, so I didn't get charged for that. I'm wearing my 9th Infantry Division hat today. Yesterday was Veterans Day, but with no further ado, I'll just walk in, and I might have some dialogue with Tamara or her kids as we're talking, but I'm not going to say anything about the exhibits. But let me just turn the camera around.
So we'll go back and pay.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Hi, I already paid. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to start my video from the outside so people saw the outside of it. So so the interesting thing on these dates is that they're discovering gold in 1848 here, and it's a really interesting history between Sutter and James Marshall on the discovery of gold. The California becomes a state in 1850, and the Mexican-American War, I think, ended 2 years prior in 1848. So there's a lot of dynamic things going on in what is now known as the state of California.
Hi. So we're trying to pay down there for parking, and the envelope box was locked. You guys just have an envelope box? I'm sorry? Okay, great. We'll sign that. Okay.
I'm trying to find. So obviously they're showing some of the indigenous people, Indians, American Indians, however people term it. I'm trying to find the exact tribe. What is interesting when people study California state history, especially in 4th grade, there's a couple of topics that they'll go over. One's the California mission system. The other is the gold rush, and what we're looking at now, specific to California state history. And the other one are the indigenous tribes or American Indians, or however you term it. But I think it's important to find out what tribe they were and how they lived. One thing that's very interesting learning about people that were here before Europeans arrived was that they didn't all share the same culture, sometimes not even the same language. But one thing that's interesting is to search to see if they were, hunters, gatherers, fishing, but also the structures they lived in, whether they were solitary, they just lived in one environment, or they followed the weather patterns and the herds of buffalo. And they were more transient with mobile or portable homes such as teepees, not so much the adobe brick. There's a really good timeline, and I recommend taking some time in this portion of the museum. Read through the timeline on the events that led up to what we know as the 1849 gold rush. Ironically, the year 1849, San Francisco 49ers football team adopted the 40. That's where they got their 49ers. And also the highway that goes through these mining towns I'm going to be exploring on my ride home. The highway number is also 49, Highway 49. So some, if not most, of the structures we're going to see today have some of the structures we're going to see today are actually reproduction. They weren't the actual structures that were here. Another interesting thing: the people that profited from the gold were never necessarily the miners or the people that discovered it. It was people that were able to leverage it, exploit it, market it. Mainly, people back east. They were the ones that were really making the money off of all this stuff. I think some of the more stable people that made money from the gold rush were people that owned the general stores that sold the supplies and the equipment needed to mine, pan for gold, extract the gold, whether it be in the running water or some of the mines they had to dig through. So that's where we're at right now. And the 49 runs down this region of the western side of the Sierra Nevadas.
Because they were used to it. They were bolted down, oh man, they were rough. That's why they rough as a rubber line.
Oh, yeah.
Because that had the suspension, where the other wagon didn't.
Yeah.
I've taken quite a few pictures of different stagecoaches in Calico and then some in Bodie. All right, so that's the interior of the museum where you check in. I'm going to go ahead and pause. Well, let me do one more thing real quick. There's a lot to read in here, and like I said, if you got the time, it'll make the exhibits much more meaningful if you take the time to read some of the stuff that's in here. All right, I'll continue this a little bit later. Bye. Okay, this is an interesting spot here. I'm with my friend Tamara, who lives in the area. She was in 4th grade here in Shingle Springs is when we went to 4th grade in elementary school. Well, when she came out here, what we're looking at is this is called a grinding stone. And where I'm not going to approach it because I don't think they want visitors approaching it anymore. But what Tamara explained to me is that at one time, like on 4th grade field trips, which is the grade in California where you're doing a lot of California state history, the students would come out here and they would simulate or actually grind stuff in the real historic grinding holes that you see here that the indigenous Indians, the tribe, which I got the name, it's on the board, I'm going to tell you the name in a second, that they actually did this at the time in the 1800s and quite possibly when the mill was in operation, but they discouraged visitors from approaching it and doing that any further to have actually students go in there and grind it. It's filled with water from the previous rains, but the name of the tribe, if I pronounce it right, Nisenan. Thank you, Tamara. So, Nisenan, and then what was the other one you said?
Walk.
Where do you see that? Or you just know that from? Oh.
And I know that, and the Maidu as well.
Oh, so those are the tribes, for the sake of slaughtering it and mispronouncing it, but those are the tribes that were actually here in this area. So I think when people learn about California state history and whether they want to refer them as American Indians or indigenous people, I always challenge people to go one step further, look at that area and try to learn the tribes. Because if you talk to people of these tribes that still may be around today, they're very proud of their specific tribe, the culture of that tribe, and the language of it. No, tribes are very similar, but I wouldn't venture to say that any two tribes were exactly alike. They're very similar, but they're also very proud. So take an opportunity if you come out to these areas. I just also wanted to point out what Tamara told me, like these are fire pits. These aren't historic. These are made for visitors. This is an expansive park that I recommend bringing food and water to and good walking shoes. But if you want to take a break and utilize the picnic benches or the barbecues, they're there. This is, we're still in the time of COVID, but there's a lot of people out here. It's a beautiful day. Highly encourage if you're in the area of Placerville or anyone on the 49 that you come check this out. So what you see here is a monument. I'm gonna get out of the sun, have the sun block it for me. This is a monument to John Marshall. He was the guy that was on the property, worked with Sutter, and I'm gonna try to, oh, can't fall off the cliff. That would not be good. It would ruin my day. I'm right at the edge of this. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want to fall down and go boom. But so right here, so this is John Marshall. His role in all of this was he was the one that actually brought, or I want to say the word discovered, but there is a part of the story, legend, folklore, whereas Marshall was on the property, those tribes I mentioned earlier actually went to the river and showed Marshall, is this what you're looking for? That's one way the story goes, is that it was actually the tribes that introduced him to where the gold was at. And there's another one where he himself was working on something, and in the process of working on the mill, the lumber mill, he discovered the gold and brought it to brought it to Sutter. But here's the interesting thing about his history and the history of this monument. This specific monument has history, and I read it on this plaque over here, is that, keep in mind the Mexican-American War, which is a significant part of American and California history, was going on between 1846 and 1848. Now, this guy, he comes to California in Oregon. He comes to California from Oregon in 1845. But he was with John C. Fremont during the Bear Flag Republic in 1846. So at the time, Mexico had already gained their independence from Spain in 1821. But in 1846, the United States and Mexico go at it. At that time, California state still belonged to Mexico. And the federal forces went into Mexico for the war purpose. But while that was going on, the Bear Flag Republic was going on. That's where you get our now California state flag, or a variation of that flag. And so in 1846, the people that were living here under Mexican rule for California were rebelling against Mexico to want to become a sovereign country themselves. So the United States was fighting Mexico to absorb the territory federally. At the same time, the Bear Flag Republic was fighting Mexico to become an independent country, standalone, up in this area, Northern California. This guy Marshall was involved with that. And then in 1848 is when Marshall is noted to discover the gold. And as we know, 1849 is the gold rush. In 1850, California gained statehood. So there was a lot going on. And when you think of California state history migrates and influences U.S. history, and U.S. history migrates into world history. It really does. I mean, it kind of starts tying together. But the other significant thing about this, well, you got the man, Marshall, which is significant, but this structure, this thing, it says here that Coloma, immediately thereafter, after he passed away, Placerville Pollard, number 9 of the Native Sons of the Golden West, in 1887, successfully advocated for the construction of this monument you see here today, the first such monument erected in California. So not only is there great significance in who he was, not only was there great significance on who Marshall was and his role in the Bear Flag Republic in 1846, his role in what we're at Sutter's Mill, but also this monument itself. I'm at the back side of the monument now because the sun is facing this way, so we're not blinding out. But the monument itself has great historic significance for just for being a monument in California. So a lot of times, you hear Sutter's Mill, and there's certain aspects of California state history, like I said in 4th grade, that you can't cover it all. But the Bear Flag Republic should be mentioned. The Mexican-American War, just as much as the Spanish mission systems, is as prevalent and important to understand and know. There are not many places on the West Coast that you can walk through the paths of history like you can on the East Coast. They're far and few between, but places like this do exist. Places where California was becoming its own state, the conflict and controversy it had, as whether it be the tribes that lived here prior, Spanish rule, Mexican rule, the federal forces coming into this area, the Californians under Mexican rule wanting to be its own country. And if you get the opportunity to travel and actually come over into these areas, it's well worth your while. And the more you understand about California state history, the more you see how that ties into national history. And the other significant point I'm going to point out, I said it in an earlier video, that a lot of these gold miners, a lot of people that were finding and discovering the gold died very poor, and he was one of them. He died penniless. That plaque says that he died penniless. And once again, the people that really profited off of it were the financiers that were, back east, the people that were understood how to, leverage and market the gold and utilize it. So exploit it. So that's just a little bit of history. Interesting monument in its own right. We're going to be seeing some other sites today. So I'll just show you. We're on the top of a hill. It takes a little bit of a hike to get up here. So that's the area we started at, way down there. We hiked up a hill. We took a break, got something to eat. But if you come visit this area, Sutter's Mill in Coloma, I highly recommend that you take the time to come up the hill and see this monument. Okay, I'm walking down from the monument right now, and with the foot trail we took up was dirt. Now we're walking down a road trail. We see some service vehicles come up, but what you see in the frame now is Marshall's cabin. So I'm going to say for sure this is where it once stood. I'm also going to say for sure that we see that light colored wood has been repaired. And I'm also going to say for sure, I don't know if this is the actual cabin, the wood, the roof and everything, or if this is all rebuilt. Well, let me back up so you guys can see it. So I don't know if this is the actual one or it has been rebuilt. There's a little plaque up front. Let me read it and see.
And there's a bed on the other side. There's a bed? Okay. And a ladder to
No,
the upstairs.
Let's go look in the other window.
Well, pretty much. Go on the
Wow, this was used as a hotel in 1850. In 1857, he purchased 14 acres, built a cabin on the spot.
Nice bed. Can we have one of those? You want one of those, sir? There you go. And there's his wash pan, and he would wash his.
And look at the ladder.
This is kind of like the same windows I saw in Calico, Ghost Town. So it looks like that's a dining area. I can't really decipher from this. If he ended up selling this cabin and moving to Kelsey, where he continued to mine and work as a blacksmith until his death in 1885 of 74. So I guess he did live in this very structure, but it looks like the repairs have been made. Something about a whatchamacallit, I can't get it, I'm sorry. A hotel being here also, or this is being used as a hotel, or there was a second floor. But I just don't see how a second floor would be here. But at least it does say that Marshall lived here in this cabin. Interesting. And then there's another plaque here, looks a little bit older. It says this looks really old. Cabin of James Marshall. This cabin was erected by Marshall and occupied by him from 1856 to 1870, I think. Born in New Jersey, October 1810. And then the rest of it is verbiage that was on that monument up there when he came to California, his involvement in the Boer Republic, the Boer Flag Revolt. And then the cemetery is over here. Let's check that out real quick. I got stuff in my other hand and it's kind of killing me. Let's see here. So, very rustic. I don't know if we'll be able to see any names on these.
Do you buy the skeleton?
None of these, last name is Kane here, none of these people I have seen in history anywhere. This is a family plot, it looks like. Bayne, B-A-Y-N-E. Let's go look at this. Put my stuff down. That's what I was carrying. It was killing me. So I just gave it to the Bayne family. Looks like the stuff you see at the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. There's a couple more over there. You like coming through the cemetery, huh? I don't think the occupants mind. I've always been fascinated by cemeteries. This is, it looks like at one time this one broke. See a crack right here going across? And then they came and fixed it, put some motor in there and fixed it. See if there's any supports on the back. Nope, no supports on the back. And then there's another area here. It looks like what they did here, they had to actually fence it off because it looks pretty inconspicuous. People probably were walking on it at one time. But I don't see anybody, a native of Ireland, age 75 years. Miss Miss Alicia Murphy. I don't see the year of death on that one. There's one more over here. Yeah, this looks fairly recent. I wouldn't doubt it. This is looks like a Gallagher family plot. I wouldn't doubt it if this was that headstone was redone afterwards. All right, I'm gonna go take some stills and get back to it in a little bit. Hope you're enjoying. So like any boom town in California, where you have gold and wealth, you have criminals, and where you have criminals, you need to have a jail. So there's a plaque over here, and I put the picture on the plaque on my Facebook site. It's gonna do a walk around real quick. So it is kind of interesting. This El Dorado County Jail. The most interesting point, it says that the jail was made of only granite blocks and steel, making it one of the most impressive and secure jails in California at the time. Housed 16 prisoners, and it was built in 1856. Coloma was the seat of El Dorado County. I'll give you a quick perimeter of it. We'll go on to something else. Sun's hitting me kind of hard. It's unbelievable they would hold 16 prisoners in here. But I guess you're not looking at a Holiday Inn or a Best Western when it comes to accommodations or features. But that's it. And then we're almost at the end. There's some other structure here that they're looking at. That might be another type of place where they kept criminals. I don't know. Let's see what they found. So is this part of the jail? Oh my goodness. This is where they put people like me when I ditch school. See, you don't go to school, this is where you go. So everyone can come and mock you.
I was just telling them when I was in the 4th grade, I think I remember being put in one of those. Like,
oh yeah, if I know anything about your life, Tamara, you were definitely one of those. Not for being a good kid either. So there's a lot of reproduced, I guess, replicas of what was here at one time. This happens to be a miner's cabin that is actually it's reproduction. It's not actual. It's gonna get hard. It'd be hard to see the inside of it because sometimes my camera wants to focus on. Well, I guess we can. It wants to focus on that metal grate. But this would have been what a miner's cabin would have looked like. Built to specs probably, I guess. It's really interesting. I mean, the park is vast, and a lot of visitors. There's a little main highway right here. There's some wineries in the area. A lot of things to see, but it's like walking through a specific history. And a lot of these are reproductions, and they just have like these signs where it talks about what was here and how it operated and worked. A lot of the original stuff is no longer here, but they tried to reproduce some of it to spec. And we're going to look at a water cannon in just a bit. So this is one thing you don't see in the Knott's Berry Farm mine train ride is hydraulic mining, which they should, because it'd be really nice to be sprayed off on the hot summer days. But there's an example of it, and then that's what the aftermath would look like as they were blasting, the hydraulic water into the stone or the side of the mountain. And here's one of the devices here. High pressure. I mean, it's kind of like what we use as a garden hose these days. But this water cannon was used to blast through the surface dirt and hopefully flush out any kind of gold remnants or flakes that might have been still there.
That's what they say. And there's a couple of gold mines still operating. The 61 mine starts with an A. No. I'll think of it. It's kind of a long name. So the 60.
Now these are some pretty cool buildings. There's one here and there's one here. They're like little mini walkthrough museums. So I'm just gonna cruise through it really quick. You walk through a little fabricated mine shaft. So you come through and you know there's a couple of pans and this stuff. Hey, I just talked to a park ranger and they said it's California state law that if you find gold, you don't get taxed up to 9 pounds. So if you find 9 pounds of gold by chance anywhere, you just claim only 9 pounds. I was joking because they're doing a panning workshop at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And, hey, anybody wants to pan for gold? And jokingly, I said, do you get charged tax on the gold you find? And she goes, no, not up to 9 pounds. And I go, really? And she goes, yeah, it's a California state law. So, but this is the cool part. You walk through here. There's another of those hydro mining, hydraulic, and then you come in this area. It's I swear to God, I saw that very guy doing that very thing in the Knott's Berry mine shaft ride. It looks just like it. I'm sure Knott's probably came up here, this and the Calico Ghost Town. But there's that. So then you come over here to this little mine car. There's the mine shaft. At first, it doesn't look like you're supposed to walk through it, but you come through and woo, it's pretty cool. Kind of gives you an example of how the shafts were dug out and reinforced. Kind of a good perspective as you're walking through the real part. Then you come up to this picture and the picture goes out. It's not 3D, but you get the idea. And it talks about processing the gold as far as like cleaning it up. And this is a depiction of I think this is where you would actually sell your gold. I think that's the office that would do that. This is some river channel mining. Here's a cool, this is the, oh, by the way, this is the 49. I'm going to be coming through here, right where Placerville is. When I start my motorcycle trip, I'm coming down through Placerville on the 49 on my motorcycle. This is a pretty good example of what I'll be doing on the way back home. Ah, cool, I'm glad I saw that. And there's another mining exhibit there. Dredging, and that would be it for this exhibit.
Wahop Store and Bank. Known as the Wahop Store and Bank, this stone building, as well as the one adjoining it, was built in 1858 to 59 by Jonas Wilder. Leased to Wahop in 1860, the building served the Chinese community of Coloma for many years. It served as the store, bank, and a social center where news from home and other Chinese communities around the state could be shared.
So after the fire, they said there's only 2 buildings that remained.
Yeah.
Well, probably the other buildings were all wooden.
Yeah.
It seems like every ghost town I've been to has had a fire, or every mining camp I've been to. After the fire.
Every town. Placerville had like 2 main, like big huge fires. I think.
Back in the day when it was a mining area.
Yeah.
So far, we've been to most of the sites around the park, but we're about ready to go into where the mill is, a reproduction of the sawmill. But I think this is an important plaque. A lot of these are all over the place, but this kind of breaks down the brief history of what this was all about. James Marshall arrived in Coloma Valley, that was called the Coloma Indians apparently. The Coloma Valley, home of the Nisenan, I might pronounce that wrong, on May 18th, 1847, to map out a site of a sawmill he was to build in partnership with John Sutter. So this is all known as Sutter's Mill. You know, that's where gold was discovered, where Sutter's Mill. We often hear the name Sutter, John Sutter. He was the partner, but he was not here. He was not the one to discover the gold. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not reading directly from the plaque at this point. Continuing on the plaque, it says, on August 18th, Marshall returned with a crew mostly Mormons, to build the mill. On Monday morning, January 24th, 1848, while inspecting the trail race downstream of the partially completed mill, Marshall picked up a flake of pure gold. The valley, the lives of Marshall and the Nessanon and the land called California were forever changed. Dedicated January 24th, 1998. California's gold discovery sesquicentennial grand parlor, native sons of the Golden West California State Parks. So, you know, this was all about building a sawmill along the river. They used the force and the power of the stream to move all the cogs and the wheels and the gears, which would, you know, be able to cut and slice and till the lumber that they were cutting down in this forest for structures. That's what it was all about. Just basically finding an apparatus to make the lumber they were cutting down feasible for building structures. Along those lines, in the hopes of building the sawmill, is when they found the gold, which turned it more from a lumber industry to gold rush era. Very interesting to actually be here after learning about some of the stuff in California state history. So the river we're talking about, you might be able to hear it. Someone's walking down towards it. Is right there. You can see it flowing through the trees. That's the river. I don't know where the exact discovery site was. And then I'll get a little bit closer to the mill itself. This is a reproduction. This is what I believe this is where it was and where it stood. But that's reproduction. And finally, we're at the mill itself. So Tamara did kind of a good tour for us. She brought us into some historical parts about the people and places that lived here before, the people that inhabited the area, the purpose of some of the Westerners coming here, and we're ending up with what people know of most, which is the Sutter's Mill. Once again, to elaborate, it was Sutter that was in partnership with Marshall, but it was Marshall that was actually out here to design the mill. So I believe what we're looking at is a rendition. This is not where it's at because the river is off to the side. I'll do a shot of that. But so people can get an experience, you'd have to imagine that these trough things, like this is all below water. All this was below water, and then the rocks on either side would be the riverbed itself. And the water would flow over here. It would come into this trough area where this wooden, where the rocks turn to wood, and then it would go into this paddle wheel. For lack of a better term, maybe that's what it's called. The paddle wheel would generate all the different gears and the cogs and the wheels up in this area that would actually be cutting the wood that would be used for construction. So here's a different aspect of it. You can see where the wheel is. There's some machinery up there. Once again, this is a reproduction. It's not the actual mill itself. That's obviously there's no water running through it. But we're going to come over here where we're going to see, oh, there's a big, huge monument thing over here. But let me give you from a far off aspect. That right there is some kind of monument. We're going to go down and read it. So let me pause this for now. I'm thinking that that is the actual site. So Tamara was just explaining, like, this is the actual site, and I believe it was in 1924 that the river banks went down far enough where they could see some of the original footings, and the original sawmill. At one point, Sutter was not having any luck or having anybody that was going to come on and work the sawmill. So when someone got abandoned, being that it was in an abandoned state, a lot of other miners, people that were looking for gold, not so much concerned about the lumber for construction, they salvaged and pillaged and repurposed the lumber that constructed the sawmill. And so what happened then is, historically speaking, that site was no longer viable. It was no longer detectable. So the one thing I showed you guys up there, when I showed you the, well, let me turn the camera on. When I showed you the structure up there, that's just a rendition of what it would look like while I was in the river that we saw earlier. This is the actual river. Oh, hold on, I'm taking pictures. This is the actual river and this would have been the site. So somewhere along the lines, the sawmill spanned a portion of the river right here, and I guess it was, I don't know which side, you know, downstream or upstream is where Marshall discovered the gold. But once again, once gold was discovered, it became that became the primary attraction here. No longer the lumber mill. So that pretty much that's pretty much everything, right, Tamara? That pretty much concludes everything. I mean, we started, like I said, with some of the historical aspects of what this land was being used for prior to the sawmill and prior to the gold rush. Something I've always wanted to walk through and see myself since I learned about it in 4th grade. So thanks for watching, and a little bit of a long video and a lot of intermissions, but hope you enjoyed it. Bye.